I wear many hijabs. Everyone's constantly talking about, do you see that hijabi present Channel 4 News, or did you hear how Mehdi Hassan on Question Time spells this person? Or even the likes of Nadia Hussain and Amir Khan and Mo Farah. All these people are arguably what you would call Muslim role models, but they've all gone into careers that I believe most of our parents would discourage us from doing so. And so actually what's more important than the profession that we're doing is encouraging us to work hard at whatever our chosen career is, and to make sure that we're always doing our best, because through that actually you can gain that recognition. Hi, my name's Esmat Jeraj. I work for Citizens UK, which is an organisation that does community organising with faith groups, educational establishments, trade unions, etc. And I currently lead on a national commission looking at barriers that Muslims face participating in public life. I've actually been involved with Citizens UK since I was 16. I first got inspired to get involved primarily because of 7/7. Before that, I'd always felt like I belonged, that I was accepted. Suddenly things were changing, and I remember facing racism that I'd never really encountered before, and felt there were two distinct parts of my identity, one being British and one being Muslim, that couldn't fully gel together, and I just knew that something needed to change. It was at this point that I actually came across Citizens UK, and I remember attending a local assembly which was a gathering of people in South London, where there was testimony being delivered from a cleaner who was not being paid the living wage, i.e. he was not being paid enough to make ends meet. He was in tears, and I think he moved everybody else to tears, and I remember seeing them change. It moved from being quite emotional to being very angry, but it wasn't an uncontrolled anger. It had a specific focus and knew exactly what they were going to do to try and create some of the change to improve things. This was towards the beginning of the living wage campaign, which has then gone on to see hundreds of thousands of people lifted out of working poverty. And so whilst that wasn't a campaign or an issue that directly impacted on me, it was a way where I could plug in some of my frustrations with the world and see things being improved for others, which then went on to do a number of other campaigns, from making the streets safer for young people to fighting for migrants' rights and refugee rights. And for me, that also really tapped into a core part of my faith. And there's a saying from a prominent Islamic personality, Ali ibn Abi Talib, that always sticks with me, where he says, a person is either your brother in faith or your equal in humanity. And so what I would want for myself, I should want for my brother or for my sister, but similarly I should want for my neighbour. And my neighbour isn't necessarily the 5 individuals who live either side of me, it's my wider community. So for me, that's actually the whole country, if not all of humankind. And so since then, I've always been involved in a number of social justice groups and struggles, particularly those areas where I feel that I hold some privilege, to try and tap into that and use it for the benefit of others. We started this National Commission approximately 20 months ago, off the back of conversations we were having with those Muslims who were talking about the challenges that they were facing in finding the time and the energy to get involved in broader civic activities. We brought together a few members of parliament, some academics, to try to understand what some of those challenges and barriers are, but more importantly to propose some very practical and tangible recommendations that could hopefully shift that status quo. Some of the challenges were perhaps not unsurprising for a Muslim involved in their local community, whether it was about the rising tide of Islamophobia, the additional scrutiny, the backlash you receive often in social media or even in the mainstream media, whereas some were much more striking for me, particularly those comments around the disadvantage and discrimination that young Muslim women in particular face entering the employment market, and the challenges that they often faced due to cultural pressure rather than external pressures, which was often due to low expectations from either family members, from the broader community, or in some instances from teachers and mentors, which then made young women, again in particular, feel like they couldn't actually excel in their chosen areas. We also had fantastic case studies of young women who'd gone on to defy expectations and really excel in their area, and they were real role models not only for young people within the community but also for employers to recognise the value and the enrichment that diversity often brings to their workforce. And so we are currently working with employers. Part of it is going into communities and working with parents, working with community leaders, to really demonstrate the value in people of all ages, all backgrounds getting involved. Yes, I am a cautious optimist, but at the same time I'm also very pragmatic. I recognise where the current struggles are, but then I'm also constantly looking for ways that we can circumvent that or actually just change the status quo. But for me, the real thing is about what legacy are you going to leave behind, not just for myself but for others. If we want to create the world that we want to see, then we have to be instrumental in creating that change. We can't be apathetic and sit back and wait for others to do it. We have to be the change makers. As I said earlier, our religion is constantly encouraging us to do more for others. Often we tend to focus our efforts on charity work, and I think that's great, but we tend to do that a lot for overseas and international causes, whereas there's so much need here locally that I feel like even if I don't have the money, I can give some time and energy towards that. And so it's about recognising that we are stronger together and we work better together. And so find those people, build those relationships, identify individuals who hold talent, and see how you can work with them to empower them to create that long-lasting change.